So, hello everybody. Good afternoon. As you can hear, typically, just as you do something like this, somebody decides to call you. So if you're ringing me right at the moment, I'll call you back after I've finished here. Um, Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'm going to do a little bit more on the projects that I started last week, just to show you a little bit. I think that you can see that I'd sprayed that with some brown Bister last week, and I did put a little video on showing me dry brushing it with some ivory Powertex. Since then I've sprayed on some green and some red Bister, and I'm going to take that a little bit further in a while to show you putting some pigments onto that. And the other project that I started last week was this one here. If you were watching last week, you will have seen I dipped fabric into ivory Powertex and added it on here, and it also showed you how to add on some stone art flowers. We've used the pansy moulds and the daisy moulds here. I think they work really well. So I'll just get on and show you the different steps, the next steps that I'm going to use to bring these forward. Swap over to my other camera and you can see what I'm doing quite nicely. I've already poured this out, some ivory Powertex onto just on paper plate actually this time. And I'm going to dry brush a little bit with some of this ivory Powertex. Just take a little bit up with my brush. I want to add just a tiny little bit at a time. So I'm just using an old tea towel here, but whatever you've got, kitchen paper if nothing else. And hold your brush nice and flat. And just go over here. And you'll see how we really bring out that texture just with a little bit of Powertex. Now I like to use Powertex for this first layer of dry brushing, because although it goes on quite a strong contrast, if you like, it does absorb in some of that brown Bister, so it quite quickly softens back down again. Keep going with this a little bit and you can see how it really builds up. It gives it a fantastic vintagey kind of look. Don't be too heavy-handed with this. We want that Bister to be there still in that in the depths of the texture. My hair's in there. I don't know about you, but my hair manages to get everywhere, everything I'm doing. So keep building it up. Over the flowers here, a bit more on my brush. Don't rush it, don't try and do too much. See there, I've got a little bit too much on my brush, so it's gone a little bit heavy. We can get that right afterwards. But just look how these flowers come out, they're amazing. Now you could use flowers that you've cut off clothes or wherever you might find them, embellishment type of flowers. Or we do have some on the website to buy. They are beautiful. They're not natural fibres, and if you want something to be water resistant with Powertex, you need to use natural fibres. So I mean, this canvas obviously isn't going to go outside, so I'm not worried about that. But if you were to buy these type of flowers, a lot of these type of things are not natural fibres. You know, when you can block by all sorts, but they usually have some quite a bit of synthetic material in them. You can see it still hardens, still goes nice and hard on your project, but because the Powertex hasn't been absorbed into it, it won't be weatherproof. It could potentially wash off. The Powertex could wash off these pieces. This one, the butterfly, you can see there's a little bit more movement in that. That's because it's quite thin material and not natural fibres, so it's got a couple of things going against it, but it hasn't stopped me using it. I just have to be aware that that will happen. Okay, so I can carry on, I can build that up. If I want it to be lighter again, just go back over it. It's had, this area's had a few moments to dry off a bit, and I'll go back over it again with a little bit more ivory Powertex. You can see it had softened down where it's absorbed in some of that brown Bister. I could dry brush all day, to be honest. Oh, hi Sherry, all the way from Charlotte in North Carolina. Fantastic. The power of the internet, eh? And hello Karen as well. I hope you're enjoying my little demonstration. This is probably one of my favourite bits, to be honest, the dry brushing, because you know you're nearly there. It's you nearly finished it, you know, and you can sit back and admire all your work, and you see the point of adding in all of your texture, getting all these lovely folds. See why they were so important. And I think I mentioned last week, I'll just put this out the way, I'm going to lift it up just a little bit and see whether you can see. This was just plain t-shirt material here, whereas this was like a fine calico type of fabric, almost a linen, and it's got quite a texture to it. I always like to vary the textures. I could have done that all in one big piece of t-shirt material, but I prefer to have that variation. So I've got the t-shirt material, that coarser material, and then my lovely flowers. I think it, when you're creating a mixed media piece, it adds a lot of interest just to have the different textures. So talking about texture, I'm going to turn this around because it's easier for me being right-handed to work like this and still keep it on camera. Here, what have I used to get these lovely crackles? It was some Easy 3D Flex powder mixed with ivory Powertex and then spread over, hairdryer on it, and it will start to crack. I usually, once it's started to crack, I leave it and let it crack on its own. In my opinion, you get the best cracks that way. The flowers, these are our own moulds, the daisy and the pansy, made with stone art clay, which I used the stone art powder and again ivory Powertex. The image was one of our beautiful rice papers that I've been meaning to use for a long time, and I've put that on here with some Easy Coat matte. So just to bring you up to speed as to what everything, how I got this far, if you didn't see the rest. And I've sprayed brown Bister on everything. Because I used the Easy Coat, it's protected my image. So when I've sprayed the Bister on, I was able to wipe it off the image. Now just watch these flowers come back to life when we, just a little bit of ivory Powertex on here. keep adding that on. Don't be too heavy handed because we want that lovely Bister in the depth there to really show up the texture. So this was ivory Powertex to start off with. Made the stone art flowers, and then I've sprayed it with brown Bister, and I'm now lightening it back up again to give me that lovely vintage look. With this image I felt, you know, we'd got to have a fairly vintage look to it. She had flowers in her hair, if you remember, and I'd covered that up with the Easy 3D Flex and then decided I needed to put some flowers back, which, you know, at the end of the day this is mixed media, so it's not a problem to have to go back and add something on with another dimension. Here on my Easy 3D, it's quite important that I do this gently because I don't want to just paint over the whole thing. So I've wiped off quite a bit of my ivory Powertex on this brush, and I'm really just stroking it over. Go fast if you want to, but not too much on your brush at the time. You see already that is starting to bring out that texture and lighten it back up so that the whole project will work together. A little bit more, but I'm using the drier Powertex on the plate rather than go back into that very wet. Again, softly. Look at all these crevices in here with that Easy 3D. It really is an amazing product for adding texture to your pieces, giving those lovely crackles. Again, over here. Who else have we got while I'm doing this? Glenda. Hi, Glenda. Anybody else from around the world watching? It's quite exciting, isn't it, to think people are tuning in from all around the world. Okay, just keep going with this. I mean, you can spend hours dry brushing, to be honest, and just lifting your texture back out, but I think you get the general idea there of what I'm doing. I will carry on with that afterwards, and what I will do is I'll finish this as far as lightening it all up, and then next week when I come back I'll show you how I'm going to add some pigments onto it and finish it off. How, again, another layer of colour and another layer of adding interest really brings the project to life. Of course, I won't forget all down here by the side of her lovely face, and we'll talk about colour choices and why I'm using the colours that that I'm going to next week. Okay, so I'll swap this over with this other project that I started last week. Excuse me reaching over. And you can see here, this one was pretty much the same as the one I've just done. It was brown Bister on it. I've got crackles on here, Easy 3D crackles. I've got sand with ivory Powertex, a little bit of paper decoration, a zip, a little bit of fabric, one of the lovely Hessian flowers that's on the website, and one of the images. And when I was looking at it, I decided that it was a little bit too stark. It needed a little bit of colour. So I've added on to here some green Bister. This was the green Bister that I used. I just sprayed it on back on over the top. And some red Bister here. Left it to dry, and then I've gone back over and dry brushed again. So I want a little bit more dry brushing just on this side here. So with this ivory Powertex I've got left on my plate, again very lightly. Sorry, it's going to be easier for me to turn this round to this side. Very lightly I'm going to go over the texture again. So don't worry if you get to a point and you think, oh, I wish it was this, and I would, you know, with that being all the brown and the ivory. Just spray more Bister on it. Just go over with another colour. It really doesn't matter, because you can just keep working it and change it and bring it up. I think that's the lovely thing with Powertex and mixed media. There's no right and wrong, and knowing that all the Powertex products and the Secret Art Loft products, actually all the pigments and the inks, that they all work so beautifully together, there's absolutely no reason that you can't change what you've done. Can you see how that's lifting that up and bringing out that texture? Just bringing it back again a little bit more. And the other thing is red Bister. So I've put red Bister on here, but once it had soaked in and it had got the brown Bister in the background, it really softened it, and then dry brushing over it with some ivory Powertex, it's got a lovely soft pink. I think these colours work together so well. Still vintage, but with a colour. And that's one of the lovely things with Bister, is that the colours are also natural. You haven't got anything that's bright and garish. It's all very natural. They're wood stain type of colours really, originally. So, you know, they're designed to be natural colours. So I think you can see there, that's really working on here. A little bit more down here perhaps. And again, this one I'm going to carry on lightening it up, working with a little bit more ivory. See, I've got a little bit of a smudge there, but if I just carry on brushing, put a little bit of pressure on, I can work that out and actually break it back up again on my texture. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. Hope you've enjoyed watching the next stage, and what I'd like to do is to think that you will come back next week at 1 o'clock and see the next part that I do and how I add these colours. I'm going to use on the other one, I'm going to use some wax to add my pigments onto that Easy 3D. On here it will just be pigments and varnish. Okay, well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.